Okay, guys, we're back. Sorry about that. The last link, for some reason, while I was sitting there waiting to get started, the screen went blank. Everything just shut down. I had to start over. So hopefully you guys can see and hear okay. So I'm going to do this tonight. We're going to be on here for another hour, and then tomorrow night I'm going to be back, and we're going to do two more live streams for the next two higher pledge levels. We're going to start there. So, what I wanted to start off with tonight, just to kind of condense this and get it all in one place, is essentially trying to articulate the path of high magic, what it is, what it's not, and the steps of the process that you're using in order to get there. So you hear the word magic used a lot these days. It's used to mean people use it when they're talking about anything. But high magic, the reason we differentiate high magic from just magic is because when you're talking about high magic, you're talking about something very specific. You are trying to do a very specific thing, and you go about doing it in a very specific way. And something can be magic, something can be a practice of magic, and not be high magic. Like, for example, manifesting things, that's magic, but it's not high magic. So what are we talking about when we're talking about high magic then? And what is it? In order to describe what high magic is, you have to take into consideration the path of creation, how this universe came into being, how it materialized. You have the very top level of reality, so to speak, which is the source that everything came from and to which everything will one day return. This infinite potential. The next level down is where the fixed stars come into being. The next level down, what it's doing, what the power of creation is doing, is forming a chain. The first link in this chain, the source, doesn't really count as a link. It's where the chain began. The first link in this chain, as the source begins to descend into the material realm, is the fixed stars. As the energy passes down even lower, it forms the constellations. As it passes down even lower, it forms the planets, including the sun and moon. As it passes down to its lowest link, that's when it becomes the elements. So you've got source, you've got fixed stars, you've got constellations, you've got planets, and you've got elements. Those are the chains in this link as the power of creation starts at the very top, starts at the source, starts at God, and descends down into the material realm. Source, fixed stars, constellations, planets, elements. Those are the steps of creation, and that's the path that you took when you incarnated into the physical realm. You descended down through those levels of creation, and each of those levels had an effect on you and created patterns within your energy system as you descended down and began to take on material form. What high magic is the way you trace this chain of creation back in reverse. You begin at the lowest. Drew says a bunch of people are in the other stream. I can't get access to it. If you can see them, if you can let them know we're here, I can't see it. So let them know that we're over here if you can, so that they don't just sit over there waiting all night. Thank you, in Alisik, for sending them the link. So as creation goes through this process, we are born. What we're trying to do is trace this chain backwards. Thank you, Drew. Thank you. What we're trying to do is trace this chain backwards in order to free ourselves from the material realm. The way we do this, this is why we start off doing the lesser banishing and the lesser invoking ritual of the pentagram. When you do that, you're working with elemental forces, earth, air, fire, and water. What you're doing when you're working with these forces also, though, is aligning your consciousness with the way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun. What I mean by that is when you're going through the lesser banishing or the lesser invoking, you are aligning your consciousness with the way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun in two ways. The first is the way it experiences these things on a daily basis. The way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun on a daily basis. That's why east represents sunrise, south represents high noon, west represents sunset, north represents night. It's the cycle of the sun in the course of a day and the way the earth experiences that journey. The second thing it's doing is aligning your consciousness with the way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun in the course of a year. In that way, east represents spring, south represents summer, west represents autumn, north represents winter. So you are aligning your consciousness with the way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun in the course of a day and in the course of the year. You're basically the earth. That's the first step. That's the first step of the process of tracing your way back up this link to the source from which all things came. Traditionally, you do that for about 9 months. Next step of the process, you're going to not be aligning yourself with the way the earth experiences the light and power of the sun. You're going to be aligning your consciousness with the sun, with the source that provides that light and power to the earth. This is when you start doing the hexagram rituals. The hexagram rituals, there's all the planetary ones. Like there's essentially, you're going to follow the same formula that you do when you're doing the pentagram rituals, only instead of drawing a blue pentagram in all 4 directions, you're going to be drawing a golden hexagram in all 4 directions. The way you draw this hexagram will vary depending on which planet you're trying to invoke. The first one that people usually start with is Saturn. When you start with Saturn, you start drawing the hexagram from a specific point. That's the hexagram of Saturn. And then you charge it with Ararita. You draw the symbol of Saturn in the center of the gold hexagram, and you charge it with Yehovah Elohim, because that's the god name associated with Binah, which is the sphere on the tree that corresponds to Saturn. You draw a gold hexagram no matter which planet you're invoking. But with each planet, you're going to start drawing it from a different point. You know, for one planet, you'll start at this point and draw it like this. For another planet, you'll start at this point and draw it like this. For another planet, you'll start at this point and draw it like this. You're drawing a gold hexagram, two triangles interlocked, but what will change is the point from which you start drawing it. Well, what you're working your way up to is the hexagram of the sun, the solar hexagram. You start with the others because it gives you practice to build up to the sun, build up to the solar hexagram. When you draw the solar hexagram or the hexagram of the sun, you're drawing all of the other planetary hexagrams on top of each other, overlapping. So you would start with the Saturn hexagram, you draw it in gold light. And then over that one, you're going to draw the Jupiter hexagram in gold light. And then over that, you're going to draw the Mars hexagram in gold light. And you're going to do that all the way down through the planets. After you've drawn all of them overlapping each other, you're going to charge that with Ararita. And you're going to draw the solar hexagram, the solar symbol for the sun in the center of it, and you're going to charge that with Yehovah Eloah Bada'ath. The reason you're drawing all of these hexagrams overlapping each other to create the solar hexagram, all of the other planetary hexagrams is what makes the solar hexagram. The reason that you draw them that way is because the way it's looked at in Magick is all the other planets are just aspects of the sun. Like, for example, Jupiter is the sun's benevolent, expansive aspect. Mars is the wrathful, destructive aspect. Netzach is like the beautiful, loving aspect. Saturn is like the limit-setting aspect. All the planets are just aspects of the sun. So the solar hexagram is made up of all of the other planetary hexagrams overlapping. So the second phase of the process, when you build up to doing the solar hexagram, from that point on, your practice will consist of first doing the lesser invoking elemental pentagram. And then on top of that, you're going to build up to doing the solar hexagram. So you're going to have the lesser pentagram, lesser invoking pentagram, and the hexagram of the solar hexagram or the hexagram of the sun on top of that. When you're doing the elemental pentagrams, you're invoking the four archangels of the elements: Michael, Raphael, Uriel, Gabriel. When you build up to doing the solar hexagram, you're going to add all the other angels, the archangels from the tree of life, the 10 archangels. This is the way it's done traditionally. Each archangel from each sphere on the tree of life. The reason you're doing that is because what you are what these spheres represent, like for planetary energies, there's both positive and negative for each planet. This is why there's 7 deadly sins and 7 virtues, because each sin and each virtue, it corresponds to a particular planet. Each planet has both a vice and a virtue connected to it, has positive things and negative things. Well, this isn't true for the spheres on the tree of life. The spheres on the tree of life are the same energies as planetary energies, but on a higher, more exalted, more purified level. So, for example, when you're invoking Tiphareth, you're invoking the sun, but on a higher level. When you're invoking Netzach, you're invoking Venus, but in a more purified form. When you're invoking Hod, you're invoking Mercury, but in a more exalted state. So Yesod is the moon, Hod is Mercury, Netzach is Venus, Tiphareth is the sun, Geberah is Mars, Hesed is Jupiter, and Binah is Saturn. They're planetary energies, but without the vice, only the virtue. So that's why you use the archangels of the spheres instead of the archangels of the planets. Third step of the process, you're tracing you've went from the elemental level back up to the planetary level. Next, you're going to go back up to the levels of the constellations. Whenever you do that, you're going to be layering 3 different rituals. You're going to first be doing the lesser invoking of the pentagram. On top of that, you're going to be doing the invoking hexagram of the sun, or the solar hexagram. On top of that, you're going to be doing the supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram. When you do the supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram, first you're invoking with the first pentagram, the lesser pentagram ritual, you're invoking the elements. With the solar hexagram, you're invoking the planets. With the supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram, you're invoking the constellations. So you'll start, this is where the Lamasu come in, the 4 living creatures, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. Those are the 4 constellations, the 4 energies of the constellations you're invoking in all 4 directions. And once you reach that phase, you're also going to be invoking, you're going to add the 12 archangels of the constellations. So when you're doing the lesser pentagram ritual, you're going to be invoking the 4 archangels of the elements. When you're invoking the pentagram, the hexagram, the solar hexagram, you're going to be adding to that the 10 archangels of the tree of life. When you stack the supreme pentagram ritual on top of that, you're also going to be adding the 12 archangels of the constellations. Then the next step, you're going to keep doing those 3 rituals. You're going to keep doing the lesser pentagram, you're going to keep doing the solar hexagram, and you're going to keep doing the supreme pentagram ritual. But then you're going to also add to the archangels that you're invoking the 36 angels of the deacons. Once you get used to doing that, once you've got those memorized and you've become proficient at that, then you're going to add the 72 angels of the Shem operation. Next step of the process, you're tracing your way back up. So remember, as the energy comes down, you've got source, then you've got fixed stars, then you've got constellations, then you've got planets, then you've got elements. Most people in Magick have, what passes for Magick these days, have no idea how this chain is even formed. You never hear them talk about or do anything higher than planetary magic. They don't even realize that there is anything higher. When you're doing these rituals, you've worked your way back up from the elemental level to the planetary level to the constellation level. The next level up is the level of the fixed stars. When you do this, just like you invoke the elements, just like you invoke the planets, just like you invoke the constellations, all using a very specific ritual, you're going to do, for the last level, you're going to be invoking the 4 royal stars. Regulus, Fomalhaut, what were the other 2? Regulus, Fomalhaut. One second, because I don't want to tell you wrong. It's been a while since I've done it. Antares and Aldebaran. Those are the 4 royal stars from ancient Persia. So you're doing elemental magic, you're doing planetary magic, you're doing zodiacal magic, and then you're rising to the very highest level right before source. by invoking the 4 royal stars. The way I did that is a combination of the lesser pentagram ritual and the supreme pentagram ritual. You know how, for example, you've got Enochian and Hebrew whenever you're doing the supreme pentagram ritual, and you're only using Hebrew whenever you invoke the lesser pentagram ritual. And how when you do the lesser pentagram ritual, you're just drawing one blue star. Whereas when you're doing the supreme ritual, first you draw a white star and then you charge it, and then you draw a white spirit wheel in the middle of it and you charge it, and then you draw a blue star on top of the white star and you charge it, and then you draw the symbol of whichever zodiacal energy you're invoking, like Taurus, Leo, those in the center over the spirit wheel, and you charge it. For the final level, it's more complicated than the lesser pentagram, but not as complicated as the supreme pentagram. You're just going to draw a white pentagram, white invoking pentagram, charge it with Aura Rita, and then over that, you're going to draw a blue invoking pentagram, and you're going to charge it with the name of the name of the royal stars. So Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, etc., all the way around. So you're stacking rituals, and this is why it takes longer and longer to do. Level 1, you're doing the lesser pentagram ritual and invoking the 4 angels of the elements. Level 2, you're doing the lesser pentagram ritual and invoking the archangels of the 4 elements and the solar hexagram ritual and invoking the 10 archangels from the tree of life. Level 3, you're invoking the lesser pentagram ritual and all 4 of the archangels of the elements, the greater solar hexagram ritual and invoking the 10 archangels of the tree of life, and the supreme pentagram ritual and invoking the 12 archangels of the constellations, the 36 archangels of the deacons, and the 72 archangels of the Shem operation. 4th level, you're invoking the lesser invoking of the pentagram and the 4 archangels associated with it. Then you're doing the solar hexagram and the 10 archangels of the tree of life. Then you're doing the supreme pentagram ritual and invoking the 12 archangels of the constellations, the 36 archangels of the deacons, and the 72 archangels of the Shem operation. 4th, you're doing the invoking of the 4 royal stars. You're stacking them. You see why every step you add. Oh, and with the royal stars, there are 15 archangels associated with the 15 fixed stars. So you're invoking those also. So you can see with each step of this process, you're adding more and more and more and more to it. You're building momentum. You know, you hear people talk about crossing the abyss. In order to cross the abyss, you have to build up momentum that's going to carry you across. That's what you're doing by adding more and more to this. A lot of this, you know, I see people asking a lot of questions. You're going to have to do a lot of research. That's part of this. It's not that someone just tells you these things. This is your journey. You can't just be fed this information like baby birds with their mouths open. How much you learn, how far you go on this path is going to depend on how much you want it. How much you want to know something. How far are you willing to go researching it, reading it, seeking this information out? Those who are willing to seek it out, who are willing to push themselves and go for it, those are the ones who will be rewarded. This is what Jesus is talking about when he says, knock and it will be opened unto you. Seek and you'll find it. Ask and it will be given. This is what he was talking about. You're going to have to do a lot of research. You know, there's no way to go into every single aspect of this stuff, or we would be sitting here talking for years. Essentially, the goetic work, most people have no need of doing the goetic work, to be honest. But the goetic work is just the mirror reflection of the 72 archangels of the Shem operation. That's why there's 72 demons in the Goetia, because they're the same thing. That's why they say it doesn't matter if you take the right-hand path or the left-hand path, both take you to the same destination. But this is one of those things, I didn't have someone feeding me every single piece of information that I needed in order to do this work. It's never that way. Even if you go through an initiation ceremony, like say in a Masonic lodge or in an order of some sort, when you're going through that, they don't tell you what all of that means. They expect that only very few people are going to figure this out. Even amongst the Masons, most people who are in the Masons, I saw TJ on here just a second ago. He can tell you this. We've had conversations about this. Most people who are in the Masons, they don't know what this stuff means. They don't know what the vows, what the stuff they're saying means, like the vows of secrecy. They're what they call checkbook Masons, which is just someone who treats it like it's a country club or a social organization or something like that. Very, very few people in these organizations will ever understand what this means, because they don't put the effort into it. You got to really want it. It's not like you just show up and they just, feed it to you a piece at a time. And it's the same way with this stuff. How much you get out of it will be determined by how badly you want it. And that's ultimately the path of magic. You'll notice we're not talking about things like, for example, the middle pillar. We're not talking about the middle pillar because the middle pillar was not part originally of high magic. The middle pillar was created by Israel Regarde for members of the Golden Dawn who essentially wanted to work more with the chakras. So he gave them a way of doing it that would be using stuff that was familiar to them and part of the Western system, based on the tree of life instead of the chakra system. But the middle pillar was not part of the original system of high magic. That didn't come about until the late 1800s, early 1900s. There's all sorts of other little things, like there's talismans, there's divination, there's all these different things that we're not even touching on because they're not part of the path of tracing your way back up this chain that allows you to transcend incarnation into the material realm. That is exactly right, Mike S. Mike S. says Masons like Mark Stavish and Randall Carlson know quite a bit. I don't know who Randall Carlson is. I've never heard that name. But if he's in the same vein as Mark Stavish, yes, they absolutely. See, look what TJ just said. TJ says, ask a Freemason about Hermeticism or Western esotericism, and he will look at you like you're from another planet. Exactly. That's what I mean. Most of the people that are doing this stuff don't even know what they're doing because they don't want to know bad enough. They're not seeking it out. They're not studying and doing research and really digging into this stuff. That's what separates masters from what would you even call them? Dabblers. But that's exactly right. Okay, so now what we're going to do, so essentially what you're doing when you're doing high magic is you are tracing your way in reverse back up this chain through which everything in existence descended. You are ascending it. Let's see what y'all are talking about. Yes, Vegas Vamp. It is story time. That's exactly what we're going to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. And I'm going to start over. I'm going to read this first page again. I think y'all would really like this book. It's not a book of magic. It's a novel, but it's a novel about magicians. And it's something that I've read multiple times just because it inspired me to do magic. So here we go. The banker was crucified on the wall of his Wall Street office. Fountain pens rammed through both wrists, and Armani Jesus. The pens are Mont Blancs, very nice. Each one is custom made, decorated with emeralds, sapphires, and rubies, and then hundreds of tiny diamonds just for good measure. They run for a hair under $1 million each. They're sturdy too, obviously. I doubt that their current function would be of much use in a marketing campaign, but still a fun fact to know. I left the shitty meth lab trailer on cinder blocks I called home when I was 13. I remember writing the goodbye letter to my snoring drunken mother on the back of a disconnect notice from Allegheny Power. I wrote my goodbyes with a gnawed-on pencil, whittled to an uneven point by a pocket knife. I left the letter on top of a pile of past due bills, truancy notices, and empty Marlboro cartons. No Mont Blancs in our clan, no sir. Another dead end. This pattern was getting old. Every connection, every lead I had made to tracking Slorzak had dried up. To date, 3 strangulations, 1 incinerated alive while taking a shower, 1 exsanguinated, a car bomb that left no trace of the explosive device, and now Wall Street performance art. I considered a working on the body, wake the old boy up for a bit of Q&A. But if the killers had experience in the life, which is what he calls the path of magic in this book, they call like the path of actually doing magic, they're calling it the life. So anytime you hear that, that's what they're talking about, people who do magic. But if the killers had experience in the life, they might have set traps for any would-be necromancer. I pulled the high-back leather chair out from behind the desk, rolled it to where I would have a decent view of the tableau, sat down and admired the effect, the craftsman's work, for a moment. Every artist signs his portrait in some way. I pulled out an American Spirit, only 3 left in the pack, second pack today. The Zippo snapped open with a hollow metallic clank. A hint of sulfur stung my nose as the wheel ground against my thumb and the flame kissed the tip of my coffin nail. Pa called cigarettes that. He was a lucky strike man. Too bad he hadn't lived long enough for them to kill him. The crucifixion itself had no occult symbolism that I recognized from the position of the body. Hands above the head, almost crossed at the wrists, but not quite. It did cause me to flash for a second to an image of an old bondage playmate of mine, the languid way she would raise her arms above her head and await the cuffs. If there was a safe word for God's snuff play, he kept it to himself. The positioning of the body and hands didn't indicate traditional Judeo-Christian iconography. There was none of the overtly brutal but metaphorically and mystically powerful symbolism of Teutonic or Norse rites. He wasn't hanged upside down, for example, or missing an eye, and I saw nary a crow. I took a long draw on the cigarette, ran a hand over my shaggy hair. I had it pulled back tight into a ponytail to keep it out of my way. I rubbed my eyes. The murder didn't betray any of the subtle trademarks of Dali absurdist chaos magic, the telltale covert rendering of metaphysical four-dimensional transcendent hypercubism that old Salvador had extrapolated in his antimatter manifesto. A good read, by the way. Even if you didn't care for his art, you had to admit Dali was a top-notch psychosocial alchemist. Signs of Satanism? Please. So last millennium. Go listen to how do you say this band's name? Gorgoroth? Gorgoroth? One of those metal bands that people like. Why don't you? No, no hocus pocus. This was someone killing a man in a very nasty way. More likely two or more, given the strength and flexibility needed to wrestle him up there, pin him, and hold him till the blood loss did its work. I was suddenly taken by the beginning of a very bad joke. How many faceless, conspiratorial hitmen does it take to crucify a banker? This wasn't a ritual or an execution. This was a message. For me, stop searching. Back off. Dark streams flowed from the dead man's wrists, staining the pen's jeweled links, ending in swollen, pregnant drops that fell down into his $800 Orlando Pita haircut, saturating his hairline and trickling across his pale, downturned face. The blood split and fractured into a wet, black web, finally meeting again to pool at his perfect chin and tumble down, splashing dark stains on the expensive wool carpet. The lines across his face reminded me of an Alice Cooper makeup after a long hot show. I wrestled a small leather couch close enough to stand on it and reach the banker's body. I braced one boot against the wall and pulled the Mont Blancs free with a lot of grunting and effort. They were sturdy and had been sunk deep through skin, bone, paneling, and plaster. The body fell, bounced off the couch, and landed with a muted squish into the dark, wet stain on the carpet that had gathered below it like a lengthening shadow. You guys find this interesting at all? I see Angelica does. Angelica says, "This is fire. I'm sold." That's exactly what it is. Oh, Emily says, sounding similar to the Dresden Files. It is similar to the Dresden Files, but about 100 times better. It's written a lot better. There's a lot more detail. It's just a better book in general. So I'm going to keep going with this for a few more minutes, but other things that we're also going to read, I've gotten a couple of other things that I want to go into with you guys. Remember a couple of days ago when I posted something about the Vampire Cafe, which is on my corner, and how the reason they call it the Vampire Cafe now is because on that site, that was where in 1932 a series of murders took place. Two brothers, John and Wayne Carter. One day, the police see a woman running down the street, running down Royal Street, and she's bloody. And they stop her and ask her what the hell's going on. And she says she just escaped from these two men, the Carter brothers, who had held her hostage for days in their house, drinking her blood. And that there were also several other people up there. The police think at first she's crazy. They go up there, and sure enough, it's exactly what she said. They find 4 other people tied to chairs with their wrists cut and wrapped in bloody bandages, where these 2 brothers had been coming in there every night after sunset, and they would open their veins again and start drinking from them. They also found 2 other dead bodies wrapped in cloth in the back room. As soon as they catch the Carter brothers, they immediately tell what they've done. They say, "We've been killing these people. We can't stop. We're vampires. We've been drinking their blood." And they ask that the police kill them because that's the only way they're ever going to be able to stop doing what they're doing. City of New Orleans obliges, takes them down to Armstrong Park and hangs them. That was one of the things I was writing about. Today, that place, the Vampire Cafe, is still there. You can still go there and eat. But one of the things you can get in there also, and Angelica, you might know this, a book on New Orleans vampires. It's a small little book, and it's the vampire history of New York. There are 3 stories involving vampirism in New York. One is the Carter brothers, which happened in 1932. And they're also buried in one of the cemeteries here. You can see it. You can see their graves. You can see their tombs on one of the cemetery tours. The other one is the Comte Saint Germain, which this is a name that you'll find in Magick a lot. He was an alchemist who showed up through periods of history like hundreds of years apart. I mean, the story would sound too bizarre and fantastical to be true if it had not been reported by very, very reliable sources. People like kings of certain countries. He would be seen like a couple of hundred years apart, dining with kings. He was in New Orleans for a short period of time also. So there's the Carter brothers, there's Saint Germain, and the Casket Girls. The Casket Girls were these, they called them that. They were these European girls who, like at one point, they needed women to come to New Orleans because the men were greatly outnumbering the women here, and they wanted to have families here. They wanted this to be a family location, not just, like a stop for pirates or whatever. So they basically promised these women in Europe a new start, to come over here, get married, start families, start a life, all this kind of stuff. And whenever they came over here, they sent coffins with them because the journey over here was so treacherous that a lot of people died on these trips. And they sent coffins with them. And I'm not going to ruin this for you other than to say that a lot of them that died, they opened the coffins up later and there was no one in the coffins. Those are the three stories in this. I've already told you about the Carter brothers. I wrote about it in one of the travel logs. So I'm not going to read that one to you out of here, but we will go over Saint Germain because he is very pertinent to the tradition of ceremonial magic. And we'll also be talking about the Coffin Girls. So that's in New Orleans Vampires by Marita Woywood Crandall is the author's name. And if I'm not mistaken, she's also the woman who owns the Vampire Boutique here. It is. Angelica says that's an amazing book. It is. And it's got photographs in it too, like lots of, let me see. I'll show you Saint Germain. Let's see. Oh, there he goes. Is that him? No, that's King Louis. So there's pictures of like their crypt where they were buried at. Lafitte's Blacksmith Bar. This is something else. This is Lafitte's right here. This is other stuff we're going to be talking about. Also about how John Lafitte was a pirate here who played an incredibly instrumental role in making New Orleans what it is right now, into shaping it into what it is today. There was a time period in history when the governor here put out a bounty on this pirate, John Lafitte's head. John Lafitte responds by turning around and putting a bounty out on the governor's head. During the War of 1812, the forces here were getting their asses handed to them. They were losing. They go to John Lafitte, and John Lafitte was a pirate captain who had several ships under his command. The forces here tell John Lafitte, if you will fight on our side, if you will help us in this war, we will pardon you and your men for all of your pirate crimes. He says, done. He loads up his ships, goes into battle, and they defeat the British forces. The War of 1812 was won by John Lafitte, the pirate. You'll see also a lot of stuff about Crowley. Crowley was here, and New Orleans was his favorite city in the United States. He lived in New Orleans, he lived in New York, and he lived in Florida. This was his favorite city here. me see. Oh, you can see, just to show you like some more of the illustrations of places. Like there's the cathedral here. We're going to be talking about the cathedral. I was taking pictures of it today to write to y'all about. Let's see what else is in here. Oh, there's the Vampire Boutique that someone was just mentioning. There's the inside of it. There's the outside of it. And I'm not going to lie to you folks, a lot of the stuff around here, it is very touristy. It's very cheesy. Like if I were to tell someone, you know, if someone's looking for a magic shop, New Orleans is not really the place to look for a magic shop. Most of the magic shops around here, to be honest, are terrible. They're like tourist traps. They don't come close to places that I used to go in Salem, places I've seen in Chicago, even places I've seen in California. Like almost everything magic associated, like magic stores and whatnot here in New Orleans are very cringy, but they can be fun. You know, it's fun to go look at that stuff sometimes. Just, you know, it's fun to do touristy things. But if I really needed, if I were on a serious supply hunt, there's not really a store in New Orleans that I would go to if I were looking for like serious magical, like if I'm looking for, say, like, you know, opera malin oil, if I'm not going to make my own, there's not a place here that I would go to get it. I would order it from somewhere else. Let's see. Oh, and there's John Lafitte. Is that him? Nope, that is a prince in Transylvania. But there's Saint Germain. So I'm not going to tell you a lot about him or the Casket Girls or anything else. I'm going to save this and read it to you because the book tells it a lot better than I can. And the other one, what did I do with the other one? Where was it at? Where did it go? Where did it go? I had it just a second ago. Huh. Got so many books laying around here. Oh, there we go. One second. This is another one that is very interesting. Haunted New Orleans. So we're going to go, I'm going to read you guys more of the stories about different haunted places here in the city. Everything from the Lalaurie Mansion, if you've ever heard of it. It's probably one of the most famously haunted places in the United States. And it has a horrendous backstory to it. One day it caught on fire, and when the firemen went in to put it out, they realized that the woman who owned the place had been torturing slaves there in the most horrendous ways for years. I mean, it was like nightmare inducing. But we're going to go, and Nicolas Cage bought it. There's been a lot of celebrities in the French Quarter. The French Quarter is where I live at. There's been a lot of celebrities in this little block of space over the years. Lawrence Fishburne, Nicolas Cage, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. There's been a lot of famous people living here, but Nicolas Cage at one point bought the Lalaurie Mansion, which was supposed to be horrendously haunted. But we're going to talk about those things. Sarah says, is that what that season AHS, American Horror Story, was based on? I'm going to be honest with you. I have never seen any of those. I've tried to watch them and I just could not get into them. But that's what I've heard. I've heard that there was a season of American Horror Story based on it. Okay, so I'm going to read a few more minutes of this. We're going to go into this a little bit more. Let's see. So he just pulled, to catch you up on the story real quick, you've got this magician sitting in this office on Wall Street in the financial district, which is where I lived at before I moved to New Orleans. And he sees the body of this banker crucified against the wall with very expensive Mont Blanc pins. And he knows that whoever did this was sending him a message to back off. That's where we're at so far. He just pulls the pins out. The body falls on the floor. and we're going to pick up from there. I hopped down, leaned over the body, and tried to imagine the killers, the struggle. It wasn't as hard for me as it might have been for most, and unfortunately, most of my insights were through the eyes of the killers, not the victim. I kept thinking how I would have killed this man, how I would have left him as an example to be found. This was far from my first visit with violence and death. Sane, healthy, normal people grew up in fucking Disneyland when it comes to evil, and beings capable of inflicting it. Monsters, human and otherwise, roam this world, I assure you. It would be nice to blame dark powers and inhuman fiends for most of the troubles in this life, but sadly, we can't. There is more human evil out there than inhuman. Our world chokes on it, drowns in it, but some of us have learned to swim. Hitler was the Henry Ford of the infernal. He developed a production line, a process to make horrible, soulless acts more cost-effective and efficient while removing accountability and guilt for his workforce. He knew the importance of branding, soundbite speeches, props, and jingles. He also knew, like any good marketer, the importance of images, symbolism, and meme, and he stole only the best. Like Ford, Hitler developed a process other sick, sad little psychopaths could duplicate and improve on across time and space. A process of atrocity that was as clean as the faces and reputations of the American industrialists who did business with him up until the war and even after it had begun. No dirty fingernails for the boys in the home office. No hands-on work for them. Somewhere in the process, someone has to get dirty hands, though. Someone has to strap on the IED, feed the starving women and children into the ovens, drop the bomb or pull the trigger. Someone slaughters the school children. In my experience, the best of these men of action are weak-willed sheep. The worst enjoy their work. Some get off on it. Evil is out there, right now, today. Maybe watching your kids play too intently at the next table in that restaurant with the overpriced pizza and the giant rat for a mascot. Fun fact, did you know that restaurant was founded and dedicated as a temple and feast hall to Karni Mata, the bride to the rat god Magick? It's true. Those little gold tokens your AB honor row students are clamoring for are sacrificial blood coins feeding the god of plagues and vermin. And trust me, you don't even want to know why they got rid of the ball pits. It's all out there. Dirty nails, nails caked with graveyard dirt, and the coagulated blood. I know these monsters. I have fought them. And if I'm to be honest with you and myself, more often than not, I have been the monster. The man I was hunting had nails that were very dirty indeed. And I had promised Baj I'd find Dusan Slorzak and make sure he paid his account in full. But now, a dead banker and another dead end. So, hopefully you guys found this interesting, seeing what y'all are talking about. Exactly, Drew. There is more evil that is human than inhuman. That's exactly 100% right. And the thing about that most of the time is most of the people in this world who are really doing evil convince themselves that they're doing good. Always. Almost every vile act done by humanity to other members of humanity has been done by people who were convincing themselves they were doing good. This is what people, even now to this day, this is what people are talking about when they're talking about like virtue signaling. What virtue signaling is, you have these people that are always looking for someone to attack, for somebody to throw under the bus. The reason they're always looking for someone to attack is so that they can pat themselves on the back and tell themselves and the rest of the world what good people they are. It's always people, when people can justify to themselves, when they can tell themselves that what they're doing is good, that they're the good guy, people who convince themselves that they're the good guy in any situation, those are the ones who have no qualms about doing horrible stuff to other people because that makes other people the bad guy. And if you're the bad guy, then you don't deserve mercy, you don't deserve respect, you don't deserve your life. It's always people who think they're doing good. You know, I'll give you an example. During the witch hunts, the witch trials in Europe, the people who were responsible for torturing millions of people and putting them to death, calling them witches, calling them Satanists, the people who were behind that, yes, it was the church, but the specific group of people in the church that were responsible for it were the Dominicans. The word Dominican means hound of God. The reason they called them hounds of God is because it was said that they could sniff out heresy. They could sniff out heretics. You have people right now, today, in this world, who are Dominicans. I don't mean they belong to the Dominican order of monks or priests who are these days are pretty harmless. I mean, these are the people who are trolling through social media constantly, looking, sniffing for someone to accuse of. Basically, all you have to do is disagree with their political ideology in any way whatsoever, and they will attack you. You automatically get accused. They always accuse you of every vile thing. And right now, the vilest thing you can be accused of on the internet is being a fascist. You've got these Dominican wannabes just looking for someone to accuse of being a fascist so that they can attack them. And the reason they want to attack them is so that they can show what a good person they are. It's what they call virtue signaling. It's absolutely 100% true. The most evil acts carried out by humanity are usually done by the people who are convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are the good guys. It's always been that way. The Dominicans, they believed they were the good guys. They believed they were saving people. It's always been that way. All right, I'm going to shut up because I've been rambling on at y'all for 2 hours tonight. That's exactly right. The end justifies the means for those people. That's exactly it. So I'm going to shut up because I've been rambling on for a long time tonight. But tomorrow, whenever we come back, we will, if you guys want to, we'll go back into Nightwise. You know, like I said, it's a fictional novel, but it's a really great story, and there's a lot of magic in it. And it inspired me. Like when I was a teenager, I used to skateboard, and I used to watch these videos, these skateboarding videos. Remember back then they were the big thing. Like in the very early 90s, you would see these skateboard videos, and I would watch these things, and like I almost never made it to the end of them because halfway through I was just so hyped up and wanting to skate that I would grab my board and be back out on the street. That's the same way reading books like this. That's what it does to me. It's like skating, but when I read these, like I get excited to actually get up and start doing ritual work again. So that's why I wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. And if y'all want to, I'll read more of it. Well, I just don't want to bore the hell out of you with it is all. That's exactly right, Sarah. Bones Brigade. Exactly. But even if you don't want to hear Nightwise, we're going to go more into the travelogue stuff, talking about the upcoming journeys, and we're going to be reading from New Orleans Vampires. We're going to be reading about Saint Germain, as well as the Casket Girls. And then we're going to go into the Haunted New Orleans book and talk about some of the other places here that are haunted. One that is both incredibly beautiful and haunted is St. Louis Cathedral, which is right down the street from me. We're going to be talking about that. That's one of the places. Michael is asking what the book is. The name of the book, for y'all that are wanting to get it, is Nightwise by R.S. Belcher. And there's also a sequel to this. I can't remember what the sequel is called, but the sequel is, it's the same characters that's in this. Okay, guys. Again, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate y'all being with me, doing these live streams, having these conversations. And let's also do another question and answer session soon. You know, talk about what it is that you're wanting to talk about. Answer questions for y'all. Okay, I'm going to shut up, and I will see those of you who are at the $20 pledge level. We're going to pick up there tomorrow and delve into, let's start with Saint Germain. That's what we're going to start with for those of you who are at the $20 pledge level, which I really, really appreciate. We're going to pick up there tomorrow, and we're going to be talking about Saint Germain. All right, guys, I love y'all, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.